endocrine gland which we are going to discuss is a thyroid gland. We discussed hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and the next gland is the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is the largest endocrine gland in human body. It is present in the neck region below the larynx on either side of the trachea. It's a bilobed gland, largest endocrine gland in human body. The gland is bilobed and is situated in front of the trachea. Trachea is the windpipe. It is situated. The gland is a bilobed gland and it is situated in front of the trachea. Trachea is a windpipe and larynx is a voice box. The two lobes of thyroid gland are connected by non-secretory band called isthmus. There are two lobes. It is a butterfly-shaped gland, or it's an H-shaped gland. It has two lobes on either side of the trachea, and both the lobes are connected by non-secretory band. That means that portion, that connecting structure is not responsible for the production of any hormones. Non-secretory band called as isthmus. The word isthmus means bridge. The thyroid lobes are composed of rounded follicles which are held together by interfollicular connective tissue called as stroma. Inside the thyroid lobe, there are many structural and functional units which are round. They are called follicles. Their follicles are held together by interfollicular tissue called as stroma. See, this is what we have discussed. This is called as a windpipe or the trachea, and this one is the larynx or the voice box. Then on either side of the trachea there is a H-shaped gland, that is the thyroid gland. It has got a right lobe and left lobe. These two lobes are connected by a non-secretory band called as isthmus. This portion is called as the isthmus. So it has the non-secretory band called as isthmus. It has got a left lobe, right lobe, and it is present below the larynx and in front of the trachea. The stroma contains blood capillaries and small group of cells called as C cells or parafollicular cell. This is one lobe of the thyroid, one lobe of the thyroid. I am taking, there are two lobes. This is one lobe and this is the other lobe of the thyroid gland. Inside the thyroid gland there are many round structures called as follicles. These structures are called as the follicles. Follicles are the structural and functional unit of thyroid gland, and in between the follicles you may get some specialized group of cells. Those specialized group of cells are called as parafollicular cells or C cells. They are smaller in size and they are in isolated group. Those isolated group of cells are called as C cells, or they are also called as a parafollicular cells. Okay, that is what we have discussed here. That means what I told you is that if you take a thyroid lobe of thyroid gland, it has got many structural and functional units called as the thyroid follicles. And in between the thyroid follicle there are group of cells called as C cells or parafollicular cells, or they are also called as clear cells, clear cells. Now, if you take a single follicle, एक follicle, one follicle, this is one follicle. A single follicle will be having a basement membrane which I have drawn. On the basement membrane there will be cuboidal epithelial cells. On the basement membrane there are cuboidal epithelial cells kept like this. Single layer of cuboidal epithelium, and in the center of the follicle there is a jelly like substance called as the colloid. This is the structure of one follicle. That is, there is a basement membrane. On the basement membrane you will get single layer of cuboidal epithelial cells, and within the follicle there is a jelly like substance called as a one colloid. It is a colloid that contains the hormone called as the what? Thyroxine. The stroma contains blood capillaries and small group of parafollicular cells or C cells. The follicles are lined with the cuboidal epithelium resting on a basement membrane. I told you there is a basement membrane. On that cuboidal epithelial cells are kept. The follicles are filled with the gelatinous colloid, jelly-like or a jelly-like substance is present within the follicle, that is called as a colloid. Thyroid gland, the labels are very important. Look properly. Larynx, that is the voice box. Left lobe of thyroid. The right lobe of thyroid. The non-secretory band connecting the two lobes, isthmus, and of course the trachea. So these are the labels. We have the larynx, then we have the right lobe of thyroid, left lobe of thyroid, the trachea and the isthmus. The larynx, left lobe, right lobe, non-secretory band, the isthmus, and of course the trachea. That is the major points which you have to label in the structure of thyroid gland. Then the TS of thyroid gland. Name of the diagram is TS, transverse section of thyroid gland. A single thyroid follicle, which is the structural and functional unit. Structural unit of thyroid gland, thyroid follicle. Each thyroid follicle has got a basement membrane. See, the label has come. On the basement membrane, cuboidal epithelial cells are kept. It encloses a jelly-like substance called as colloid. Encloses a jelly-like substance. That jelly-like substance is called as a colloid. Then we can see parafollicular cells or C cells or clear cells, and blood capillaries are coming. These are the various labels you have to make in the TS of the thyroid gland. It's a very important diagram, TS of thyroid gland. See the labels coming again. Transverse section of thyroid gland, one thyroid follicle, basement membrane, cuboidal epithelium, colloid, the jelly-like substance, parafollicular cells or C cells, and blood capillary. This diagram you have to make while drawing the TS. Hormones of thyroid gland. Thyroid gland secretes two hormones. One is thyroxine, thyrocalcitonin. Thyroxine is secreted by the follicular cells, stimulated by the TSH of pituitary gland. That is, pituitary gland secretes TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. The TSH will influence thyroid gland so that the thyroid gland will be able to produce a hormone called as one thyroxine. See the relation. Pituitary gland secretes TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates thyroid gland so that the thyroid gland can secrete hormone called as one thyroxine. This is the relation between it. Thyroxine is always produced by thyroid gland. For the thyroid gland to produce thyroxine, TSH is required, and TSH comes from the pituitary gland. Thyroxine are of two types. T3 or triiodothyronine with 3 iodine atoms, and T4 or tetraiodothyronine with 4 iodine atoms. Thyroxine is synthesized by attaching iodine atom to an amino acid tyrosine by enzymatic actions. The amino acid tyrosine binds to single iodine atoms or 2 iodine atoms to produce T1 and T2 respectively. First there is a formation of T1 and T2, and then T1 and T2 are further metabolized using iodine atoms to produce T3 and T4. T1 and T2 molecules bind end to end to make colloidal mass inside the follicles. They are further metabolized to prepare T3 and T4. T3 is secreted in smaller quantity but physiologically more active. T4 secreted in larger quantity, physiologically less active, and their action is short lasting. Thyroid gland is the only gland that stores its hormones. T3 and T4 are stored before secretion and are regulated by thyrotropin of pituitary gland by negative feedback mechanism. That means if thyroxine is more, the secretion of TSH by the pituitary gland becomes less. If thyroxine is more, the production of TSH by the pituitary gland will be less, and vice versa. What is the role of thyroxine? Thyroxine regulates BMR, basal metabolic rate. Body ka basal metabolic rate is regulated by thyroxine. It also regulates metabolism by stimulating protein synthesis and promotes body tissues. It promotes body growth, body development by promoting the production of proteins as well as tissues. It helps in thermoregulation by increasing heat production. It increases action of neurotransmitters like adrenaline and noradrenaline. It also supports erythropoiesis or RBC production. Helps in maintenance, water and electrolyte balance. Electrolyte balance means ionic balance, balance of ions in the body. It regulates reproductive cycles in human females. Essential for normal mental alertness. For a person to remain mentally alert, this hormone is essential. Hyperproduction of thyroxine results in hyperactivity, and hypoproduction of thyroxine results in lesser activity or lethargism. With this, we complete the morphology and functions of thyroid gland and thyroxine. We have disorders of thyroxine coming as well as thyrocalcitonin coming in the next class.